did you meet Mr. Comstock? He was not from here.
No, but I was.
Yeah.
We had a neighbor. I don't remember this. I don't remember meeting him at this. But he always told this story. He had gone to the... my neighbor's barn burned at the same time our barns burned. It was because we were hiring Japanese instead of white people for the hops. The unions, Workers of the World, no, IWW, Industrial Workers of the World, was a powerful union at the time. And they had gone to my grandfather and threatened him for hiring Japanese to work the hop fields. They always sent Japanese workers. They had one boss man who contracted to work all these hop fields, and he sent over to Japan and got a boatload of Japanese to come in and plant the hops. It's hard digging work, you know, and then to trellis them up on the wires. And so one year, 1908, my grandfather succumbed to them. In fact, I think he was a little afraid. And no, it was earlier than that he succumbed and hired white workers. And the hops all fell down that year. They weren't done properly. They weren't planted properly. The twine that they used was poor, and they weren't trellised right. There was a heavy rain, and the hops fell down, and it was dreadful. The hops had to be picked off the ground, and they were moldy, and a great deal of money was lost on them. So the next year, grandfather went back to the Japanese, as did all the farmers. And that year was 1908. All this other was earlier. One dark night, our barn was burned with all the horses in it, and all the equipment in August, which was just before the harvest, was set on fire. By the time my father got up there, my grandmother ran the half mile from her house to our house and was pounding on the door saying, "Wilson, Wilson, the barn's on fire." And my dad got into some clothes and got up there, but by the time he got there, there was such a ring of fire around the barn he couldn't get near it. Horses and wagons and mules and equipment in hop season. The barn, just the next farm, the barn burned 2 or 3 nights later. 2 or 3 nights later, another barn burned. And it was really a holocaust. It was dreadful. So,
and did they know who said they...
Well, they suspected these IWWs because they'd been threatened, but they never proved anything. I don't know where I was. You asked me some question.
Was that the Tong War?
No, that wasn't. Had nothing to do with that. No, that was the Chinese. What were we talking about before you asked me that question?
Where did you meet Mr. Comstock?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, the Maddoxes, of course, everybody had to build new barns. You had to have a great big barn for haste. It was. It was
people who loved their animals.
Yes. The horse that my dad had courted Mother on, old Johnny, an old black charger, was in the barn and burned. And but anyway, the Maddoxes, when they rebuilt their barn, had a big barn dance. And by that time, this was 1912 that they had a barn dance and rebuilt this barn. And invited all the neighbors, of course. And my sister was in high school at the time. She was 15. Wait a minute. I was 13. She was 15. And the Maddoxes were all our age. In fact, Joe Maddox, who's been district attorney here and is now quite elderly, and he's a couple of years older than I am, was my first boyfriend. And I went to this dance with my mother and father because they couldn't leave me home. I guess they took the boys and my little sister up to Grandma's to stay all night or something, but took Francis and me to this dance. And this is my husband's story. It's not mine. I don't remember it. I remember going to the dance, but I don't ever remember seeing him or doing this. And he said he spotted me. A pretty little girl sitting there with her red cheeks and her curls up on top of her head. And he had gone with a girl who was later a friend of mine and asked her if she knew me. And she said, yes, I know her. She said, they come into the drugstore all the time. Dad knows them. And they're the Finley girls. So he said, will you introduce me to that little one sitting over there with that old couple? That was my mother and father. They weren't old. So she brought him over, and he asked me to dance. And he swears, or swore, when he was living, that I stuck my finger in my mouth, and I said, I don't rag, thank you. But I don't remember that. But he's told that many, many a time. And he liked to tell stories on me like that. He told another story. I don't think I'll tell that on this. It's another tale that he used to tell about Joe Maddox and me, but it's kind of funny. I'll tell you when we're off the air.